All right, and with that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Great. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am Melissa Petersen, and I am one of the presenters.
I am Mackenzie Hess. I am also one of the presenters.
And I am Mackenzie Light, the third presenter tonight.
We are so glad that you're here. I know in some time zones, it's a little later. In Seattle, where we are, it's about 4 p.m., so we just finished our workday. If you are wanting the handout, I know it was emailed to you, but the QR code that's on the screen right now is also a link to the handout. If anybody wants to grab it that way, you are welcome to. It was not accessible earlier in the day because we were still working on it, but now it is accessible. So feel free to grab that if you would like. Pause for a sec. And let's talk a little bit more about ourselves. I am Melissa Petersen. I am an SLP. I've been an SLP in Washington State Schools for about 16 years. I'm also an AAC specialist in our district and work a lot with the AT team and with the OTs, including these two wonderful people. And in my spare time, I really like canoeing and outdoorsing and collecting puppies. I do some service dog training, and I'm about to get my next one on Friday. So I'm very excited about that tonight. Mackenzie Hess, you are up.
Yes, I am Mackenzie Hess. Like I said, I'm an occupational therapist. This is my 5th year being an OT, all 5 years in the school district. And about last year, this is about my 2nd year doing more assistive technology support and problem solving with the lovely Melissa Petersen and our assistive technology team and working with kids with complex bodies. So super excited, super passionate about it. And in my spare time, I really enjoy anything outdoors, hanging out with my dog, and then caring for my plant babies. So you'll see a little monstera leaf in all of the slides that are mine.
And I am the other Mackenzie. My name is Mackenzie Light, and I've been an occupational therapist for about 10 years. I worked in North Carolina and Washington State. I've worked in the Edmonds School District. This is my 2nd year, and also my 2nd year of working with kids with complex bodies and using switches a lot during our therapy sessions to make them fun and engaging. I love Washington State, and in my free time, I like to hike and backpack and canoe with Mackenzie and Melissa and do all sorts of things outside. So thanks for being here tonight. I see people are here from all over the US, which is pretty cool. And we look forward to talking to you.
That is awesome. Yeah, there are people from everywhere. Keep it coming. I love seeing where everybody's from. All right, again, if you are a QR code kind of person, here is the QR code for the handout. It is also in the chat, so I'm going to keep moving because I think you guys can access that. So for tonight's presentation, we are going to talk about how we have been co-planning and coming up with themes to make our therapy really fun for some really complicated kids. But before we do that, we're going to start with a little bit of background, and I get most of that part. Background kind of in terms of shared understandings that we have with the 3 of us, and things that if you were thinking of kind of doing this style of therapy or just wanting to dip your toes in, these kind of underlying assumptions these are things that we are just assuming and working from those assumptions, and they kind of make everything else work. So we wanted to start with that background information to make sure that you know what page we're on, because it's a pretty fun book. The inspiration for us doing this thing was we all went to a class. We went to a class. It was an in-person class, not a webinar, but we went to a class with these 2 very engaging ladies named Brenda Del Monte and Melanie Thompson. Brenda is an SLP and Melanie is an OT. And they were sharing about how they were doing this shared therapy planning that was based around themes. And they had just all these amazing videos and fun like activities. And we were just blown away. And we're like, oh my goodness, we must do this immediately. And I think that the class that we went to was like on a Friday, and like on the following Monday we met and we're like, we're gonna do this. Sign me up. Well, actually, I should say the Mackenzies were like, Melissa, we're gonna do this. you're meeting in our office at 8 a.m. on Monday and we're going to figure this out. I'm pretty sure that's how it happened.
It's true.
Yeah, that is true. And so we've been doing this. We went to the class in November, and like our first unit that we did was in December, and we've been doing it every month since because it's just so fun. So that is where we started from, and these are the two people who inspired us. If you ever get a chance to hear them speak, I highly recommend it because they're both excellent, especially together. And another big part of kind of what's underlying this is that when we're working as a team, like with OT and SLP, we also sometimes include some PT stuff in there. We are not all having our own separate goals that we're working on. Like I'm working on language over here, and Mackenzie Hess is working on making messes over there. Mackenzie Light is working on cleaning up messes over in the other corner. Like, I'm just joking, but it is a running joke how much OTs love mess, and how much that's been a transition for me. But you will see on this slide, there is a statement that has been co-written by all of our national organizations talking about how it is best practice to have goals that we're all working on together. We're all working on the same goals. Linked on this slide, I'll just click it so that you can see, is the statement, the joint statement from AOTA, APTA, and ASHA, talking about how to come up with those goals, why they're important, why this kind of working, particularly with complex students, is really important. I mean, it's a great resource. We didn't write it, we're just referencing it. But it talks about how to write those collaborative goals and why that's important, and gives some really nice examples of kind of what that looks like in practice. So we're not going to go into this statement in depth. I just wanted you to know that this statement exists. If you're interested in learning more about kind of that process, it's a great place to start to learn more about it. And this is definitely the framework that we are working from to make sure that we have the goals for the student, and then we are all coming in with our own expertise on like how to support those goals together for each student. I'm gonna keep going since I don't see anything in the Q&A for questions at the moment. Actually, I'm not gonna keep going, Mackenzie. Yes.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. And part of our activities that we are planning, we kind of have our basic equipment that we almost always use in our activities. And then we'll also kind of go into some of our favorite switch activities too, and some other equipment that we kind of supplement with it. First on to the very left is a voice output switch. And Melissa's going to be diving a little bit deeper, showing you some of those, some of the different parts of the voice output. So we'll kind of hold on that. In the middle is the power link. The power link is like your best friend in terms of switch adapting equipment on the fly. You can plug in a variety of things in there, and it like instantly will make it switch accessible. So you don't have to worry about buying really expensive toys that are way more expensive because they're switch adapted, or working with boundary interrupters. The power link, if you're not familiar with it, is a really good tool. And then just a basic jelly bean switch. If your kids already have switch sites and switches that they're using, you can also just use those sites that they're already working with. And then thinking about some of the other tools that we love to incorporate into our activities. On the very left, you can see our friend Azalea. She's having a really fun time with the water sprayer. That was fun for field day, an impromptu water fight, but also using things for art or tie-dye. We've used the water sprayer for. In the center is a switch adapted pourer. We use that almost all the time for like cooking, for doing experiments, for art. There's lots of fun ways that you can use a switch adapted pourer. The spinner is also in the middle. That's really fun for board games or thinking about making choices, picking ingredients to go into a smoothie, things like that. And then we have Buzz as our representation for an activity that moves. I also have like a fun little car here. Any toy that moves, we can also incorporate in terms of for our activities that we're going to kind of go into and show you a little bit more of. So those are kind of the equipment that we've been using. So you don't need a super expansive AT library. I know sometimes that's kind of a drawback and feels like a barrier, is having all of these tools. We've really been making it work from just a few items. So yeah. And let us know if there's any equipment on here that you aren't sure of, and I can message in the chat.
Excellent. I just figured out the Q&A. I was like, oh, that's fun. All right. So here are some of the assumptions. That's the equipment that we're using. It is linked in the handout. And somebody asked about the joint statement. That is linked in the slide deck, which is linked in the handout. So you can definitely find that there. In terms of assumptions, I'm going to tell a little story here. Presuming competence is a big, it's a popular thing to say, but it's also a really important concept. So I want to talk a little bit here. This is a student named Jacob, who we work with here at our school. And I wanted to put this photo up because this is from 2 years ago when we were just figuring out where his switches were going to be. You'll see he's got a red jelly bean at his elbow. And then he's got a proximity switch up here by his head. And that is what he ended up going with. But this is when we were still kind of like playing around with it, and we'd gotten them all set up. And the one by his head was hooked up to a voice output switch that said yes, and his elbow said no. And so we'd gotten them set up. We were thinking they were going to be pretty good. And then one day I walk into class, and I noticed that he only has his head switch hooked up. The elbow switch is off. And I should preface this by saying this is a classroom with an amazing teacher and some of my favorite paras. And like, they're a really solid team, because I don't want anybody to feel like I'm dissing on my team. They are a fantastic team who I brag about all the time. But I came in and his elbow switch was not hooked up. And so I just kind of was like, wait, I thought he had an elbow switch. What's going on? And what they told me was like, well, he had it, but then we were doing a lesson and he kept saying, no. Like he kept hitting it accidentally all the time. And so we took it off so he could just focus on his head switch and figure out how to say yes. And it's like, oh, okay, that seems a little, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, there's a little strange. So then I was like, well, can I just play with it a little bit and see if I can figure it out, see if I can figure out what was going on. And because I noticed that his elbow was really still, like he was just sitting there very still, not moving. And then I kind of walked up. I'm like, hey, Jacob, I noticed that your no switch was taken off. I'm going to just put it back here and I'll just make sure it's in the right spot. It kind of gives me this smile. And then I put it back on, and all of a sudden his elbow is just going crazy. No. And I was like, wait a minute here. So what had actually happened was they were doing a lesson and he was being a stinky first grade boy and just saying, no, and just like messing with them. Absolutely knew exactly what he was doing. None of the hits were accidental. But if we had thought that they were accidental, we would have missed the opportunity to see what he knew. And the second half of the slide is an example of what he knew. This was also in that same year. At the end of that year, we were using an alternative pencil, which I'll talk about in a little bit, to let him pick letters using that yes and no. We just like, do you want A? Do you want B? Do you want C? He, at the end in May, was able to spell his name with almost all the right letters using partner assisted scanning. So again, this kid is super competent, but he didn't look competent. And the thing that made us understand that he was us acting like he was and assuming that he meant it and just going with it. And that's just such an important, I know I'm taking up a lot of our time, but it's just such an important message that I really wanted to make sure that we talked about that and establish that as kind of a baseline of what we are assuming when we're presenting activities to children. Another assumption is that we all need to be working together on literacy for all of our students, particularly our non-speaking students, students who have complicated bodies, students who are learning to use switches or other alternate access to use AAC. This graphic is from Jane Farrell, who is a special ed teacher in Australia. And it sorts out on the right side of the screen is conventional literacy, which includes guided reading, self-selected reading, working with words, independent writing. that's the kind of stuff that a lot of our teachers are taught in their teacher prep programs. This is how you teach literacy. The left side of the screen is stuff that I didn't learn in grad school. None of the teachers I work with have been taught how to do emergent literacy, which is shared reading, where we're reading together and the point is just to talk about a book. Shared writing, independent writing, playing with letters and sounds, like that stuff that we were doing with Jacob and the alternative pencil, and independent reading. So you will see in our activities, in our monthly plans, we have a lot of shared reading and a lot of shared writing and a lot of alternative pencil stuff. So that is just a bit, that this is in no way long enough to talk about it. The book Comprehensive Literacy for All is a great kind of a full explanation of all of those things, but we just wanted to kind of put it out here that these are things that we are intentionally including in our lesson plans because they're so important. And the other thing that's really important to talk about is that when we are doing these activities, we are not using hand over hand because it is not evidence-based. Did you know that? It is not. It is actually, when we are moving somebody else's body, their brain is not making a motor plan, which means we're preventing them from learning how to do it themselves if we're moving their bodies for them. It also limits interdependence. It massively limits autonomy and doesn't give our students a chance to choose whether they want to participate or not. So there's a lot of other options, such as making your activities more fun, making them switch accessible, or doing hand under hand, which are a lot better and much kinder and also evidence-based instead of using hand over hand. And I just love this photo of you, Hess.
Yes, that goes back to me making messes because I let them do it themselves, even if it results in a mess. One more thing to add is when we are just touching our kids' bodies, all it does is teach them that it's okay for somebody to touch their body without consent. And we want to make sure, especially the population we're working with, is not learning that because they are vulnerable to a lot of things, including assault. So we try to be hands-off as much as possible.
Yes. Another thing that's super important when we're working on like the kind of activities that we're doing is every student needs a way to tell us yes and no. We're doing a lot of partner assisted scanning. Like if we're asking them, do you want to do this? Do you want to pick this? This example right here is of 2 step-by-step switches that were brilliantly jerry-rigged by Hess, I believe, for a student who liked to rip them off the desk. And they just have they have a series of yeses and a series of nos, which I really love. I'm actually going to stop sharing because instead of using that video, I'm going to use a real life example right here. So this is a similar kind of a setup. Yes, we've got some yeses over here. And they cycle. I don't know if you can hear all of them. No? Okay, well, this one is saying yes, and this one is saying no. Saying nope, no. Oh, I think it's because I have my headphones in. All right, I'm going to go back to this sharing screen and do the video. And I'm going to make sure that I share the sound. There we go.
Absolutely. I know, you're very excited. Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Minus
Get out of here. No. Nope. No way.
Take away
Get out of here.
All right, you can hear the sound on that, right? Excellent, yes. So we do a lot. We also teach kids like yes and no head movements or other ways that they can tell us yes and no. Abelnet didn't pay us to say this, but I really love a voice output switch. They're just great. There are so many uses for them. They are not a replacement for robust AAC, but they are a really solid tool. And that's why it's one of the things that we use all the time. And a lot of time it is for kids to tell us yes and no. All right, and the last kind of assumption that we are making is that every student needs to have a full AAC system, not just voice output switches, although those are a great addition, but they need to have robust AAC, meaning they have all the words, they're learning what they are and what they mean and how to find them all. but there are no prerequisites to starting with that full system. In our school district, most students start with an iPad with touch chat, word power 60. There we can go. You can see that better. That's where most students start. Some students start at a 108 if they are already spellers and they have the keyboard on that screen. We're not starting with 4 buttons and then moving to 6 and then moving to 12 and then moving to 20. That approach doesn't get what you need, because students can't learn it if it's not available for them to experiment and play and explore in it. There are 2 resources that are linked in the slide deck right here. One of them is an AAC framework that we developed for our district, which I will click on it just so you can see it. It is linked in the slide deck so you can come back to it later. And it is a document that we put together that talks about our assumptions around AAC, about that it's a human right, that learning it mirrors language development, and that we need to be focusing on literacy. And it also has a list of minimum requirements that we don't give kids AAC that has less than all of these things. So that is just another kind of foundational document that might be useful to you. There's about 3 pages of references on the last half of it that kind of support all of those important things. And there's also an app checklist if you're looking for, like, is the app that I am using a robust app? That's kind of, those are our assumptions. I will check the Q&A. Is there anything in the Q&A that we need to pause for?
There's a question in the Q&A about partner assisted scanning. Ken's answered it, but would it be
Perfect.
helpful, MP, to like maybe give an example of it?
Well, this video is a
Oh,
perfect example of
perfect.
it. So we're gonna do that, don't worry. Excellent. Well, I will play this video then. So this video is Heidi Brislin, who is an OT in our district. She and I are the 2 halves of this assistive tech team, and she is using an alternative pencil, which is, nope. There, go back. There we go. She is using an alternative pencil with a student, which is just that letter strip. And she's going to ask her for each letter, do you want this one? Do you want this one? Do you want this one? And then Ashlyn will be picking some letters. And the task is she made some art that you see on the tray right in front of her, and she is signing her name to the art. So let's see how that works.
Your name, do you want an F?
Jungle Lake rock, or you want to say yellow rock? Any other letters? Hold on. Nope.
Nope. Do you want a G?
Look at me. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna put a G. All right, do you want another G?
Yellow rock. Yeah. Yellow rock.
Hard pass.
Hard pass. All right, do you want an H?
Yellow rock. Got a G. Nice job.
Yep.
All right, let's put an H.
Any more? Yellow rock.
Okay, I'm gonna turn the page.
No thanks.
Do you want an, oh, I already got a no thanks for I. Do you want a J?
You are the artist. And these are the letters.
I see you looking towards that one. I'm gonna say that's a hard pass too.
Are we finished?
Do you want a K?
Hold on. We gotta figure out how to do the Are we done with your art? Alternative pencil.
I think you're looking at the camera. Are you trying to get over to that switch? We might need to move them just a hair closer.
All righty.
Your name, do you
There
want
we
an
go.
F?
So that was an example of partner assisted scanning. Did that help to answer the question about that? Yes, I see a thumbs up. Perfect. It's also an example of another thing, which is Ashlyn didn't know the alphabet at this point. The point of using robust, using all of the letters or all of the words, is that they don't know them yet, and using them is how they learn them. It is the opposite of drilling until they understand the letter A, and then adding the letter B, and then you drill B until they understand it, and then you add C. That approach doesn't work, partly because you never get to Z, partly because it's never fun enough to be engaging enough in order to actually do something with it. I did see a question which we'll probably be answering throughout when we get more into the activities about students who are complex and don't show much joint attention. And without knowing the specific student, I can't comment too deeply, but what I can say is when I have seen that in our students, the issue is almost always the task we are offering them is boring, or it's not accessible to them. Like maybe for sensory reasons, maybe we're asking them to move their body in a way that's really challenging while thinking about something really hard. 2 hard things at once, don't do it. Usually the issue is that we aren't being fun enough or the task isn't accessible. When we make it more fun and more accessible, suddenly they engage a lot. So I would really consider whether our assumptions about what the students are showing us is based on us thinking that they can't do things or us thinking that we can change things. That's kind of what I would say to that one. Here is one more video of an alternative pencil. This is another student who I work with. I was running the camera on this one. She has a yes switch right here and a no switch right here. She uses her head sometimes. Her favorite is her nose and her tongue. So it was really tricky to get switches that she liked. But you will see her not engaging in like this worksheet where she's choosing which words to kind of choose to fill in the worksheet. It's like a shared writing thing. And then I cue the para to try using the alphabet because my impression was she's kind of bored with this. Let's make it more fun. And just watch her level of engagement when she is using the words that the para has versus when she gets to use the alphabet.
Say the fish eats squid. Do you want a break? Can you come back to the table? Let's see if you want to try again. We can also be done. Do you want to look at the paper up close? We've done 1, 2 sentences. You see it? Do you want to say a shark eats squid or a shark eats fish? A shark eats fish? You're leaning more towards your no. So we'll put this in the try again. Do you want to say the fish eats squid? Or the shark eats squid? Doesn't look like it.
I want to offer
Let's
something
come back to
else,
this one.
like
Something different?
Yeah, do you want something different?
Do you want to say the shark eats something that starts with one of these letters? A, B, C, or D? No, doesn't look like it.
All of a sudden she
Does it
starts
start with
doing
one
her
of these
switches.
letters? E, F, G, or H? Yes? E?
Yep.
Okay. What about, do you want to say the shark eats elephant seal? You're leaning on your yes. Elephant seal?
Yes.
All right, we're going to write that one in.
Yeah, I love that part about when the para gave her some feedback about, I see you leaning on it, but she hadn't activated yet. And Sharina was like, oh yeah, I haven't. And then she hit it. So that I think answers a lot of the questions that kind of have been coming up in the chat. She's just using her yes, no's right now. She also has a robust device that she is learning to navigate with switch scanning. Sharina has CVI. There was a question about CVI, and yeah, you do need to not try to ask a kid's eyes to do things that they don't do. But that doesn't mean you don't provide robust language. It just means you don't ask them to use it with their eyes. So maybe switch scanning with auditory preview would be a better option for that. Jacob, the student who signed his name with the alternative pencil with the elbow story, he also has CVI. And he is actually learning to use eye gaze, but he has his eye gaze system where he's practicing his eye skills. And then we use partner assisted scanning with a pod book to do language stuff. So I would say it's often a yes and kind of an answer. Like, yes, we're going to help them with their eye skills, but we're not going to prevent them from having access to robust AAC because their eyes aren't the way that they're going to use AAC primarily.
Say the fish.
All right. The process. This is the fun part. Don't worry.
Thanks, ladies, for talking about the background. I'm going to share a little bit about the process and how we make this happen in the school system. The answer is usually Zoom. The picture on the right, you can see Melissa, Mackenzie, and I collaborating. We work in a district with a lot of schools. We have a lot of kids on our caseloads, and we're not always at the same place at the same time. So sometimes we meet in person. In Edmonds, we fortunately have a indirect service week, which means we see students directly for 3 weeks, and then that last week is a consultation week. So sometimes we are able to get together in person, but if not, we just meet up virtually. And our virtual meetups or in person usually last 30 minutes unless we're talking about other things, but they're quick and short and sweet. And we're able to plan activities for an entire month, which is pretty good. I think I can plan about a third of my caseload whenever we get together. When we first started collaborating, we selected themes and activities based on our preferences, books we had on our shelves and things that we wanted to do. But once the teachers saw how fun and exciting our activities were, they wanted, to be a part of it, to be a part of the fun. They didn't want to sit and do math worksheets with the kids. They wanted to do switch activities with the kids, but working on math skills at the same time. So once we got the teacher buy-in, now we plan our activities around units and themes that are happening in the classroom. In our intensive support classrooms in Edmonds, our teachers are using Raytopia. It's a literacy curriculum created by Don Johnson. So once we know the themes that are happening in the classroom, then we use this planning document. It's linked here, and you can also find that on the landing page. So Melissa, if you go to the next slide, we can look closely at our planning document. I want to give a shout out once again to Brenda Del Monte and Melanie Thompson for creating this wonderful piece of work. We have adapted it and changed it to meet our needs, and feel free to do the same. Download this, and then once you guys start collaborating and working together, you can add whatever you need to. And please share with us how you make the changes so we can copy you guys too. But I do think Melissa and Mackenzie and I all agree that this simple document has transformed the way we treat together, co-treat. Like we said before, these activities are just fun and engaging now. They're not as boring as they used to be. They're child-centered. And what's super fun is just that we're basing it around the Raytopia themes. So these kids are learning about these things all day in the classroom instead of just sitting at the table and doing worksheets for math. And they're actually able to get messy and get dirty and learn about numbers at the same exact time. So this is how it works. Let's go back there real quick. I'm gonna just talk about the last unit that we did. So the last unit that we planned around Raytopia was about sports. So Melissa picked 2 books, one for the primary classes and then one for the intermediate classes. And then Mackenzie, Hess, and I frantically and excitedly start shouting out week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and we quickly come up with ideas because we only have 30 minutes, so it goes by pretty fast. So for sports, we're gonna do a ball launcher with for baseball. We're gonna use a leaf blower with a beach ball for volleyball. We're gonna do some painting with kids using sports balls in the pourer, and we're gonna get the balls soaked in paint, and then we're gonna use the pourer to pour onto canvas. So the kids with complex bodies are able to use the switches to complete the art activities. I mean, we have probably more than 4 weeks worth of activities, but sometimes it's good to over plan. And then what we do is we tie all of our fun activities into the content area. So for example, Melissa will work on the literacy piece, even though we all work on that piece. Sometimes she's the one that kind of plans that. So she does the shared reading and writing. And then we put bullet points under each of these areas for science, math, and art. So the teachers know what we're going to be doing. If we're not there, they can expand on these ideas. And the options are endless. So for science, this time, what we're going to do is for baseball, we're going to talk about different size bats and balls and make predictions. And for math, we're going to take rulers and tape measures and measure how far the balls go and talk about comparisons and just real numbers instead of, again, just sitting down and doing worksheets. And then finally, we have our social emotional piece. So we'll talk about how you feel during sports. Are you tired? Are you hot? Are you sweaty? Talk about winning and losing it, and all sorts of things like that. And then we also include all of the tools that we're going to be using that Mac and Melissa talks about earlier. So we have the pourer, we have the power link, we have the switches. So if we're not there, somebody can look at this planning doc and just whip it together quickly with the tools that we have. We always don't plan together, unfortunately, because we're not at the same schools at the same time, but we always plan together, but we don't always treat together. It kind of depends on the schools, the needs of the kids, flexibility of the teacher, space. you name it. But our long-term goal would be to co-treat as a whole class with everybody in there. But right now we just don't have enough equipment. We have a couple pours and I mean, tons of switches, but it would be nice someday if every student could have their own pour and we could be doing all of this together. So we're slowly building our switch library. But now that we have our teacher buy-in and our activities aren't just OT and SLP activities, but they're actually academically relevant, I think that, you know, the world is our oyster. We're gonna do whatever we want. And then we always push in, we try to push in because we want our teachers to see that we're not doing hand-over-hand assistance. We want them to see where we put the switches. We want them to see what verbal cues we use, keeping it short and sweet and not cheering the whole time when the student is making that motor movement to hit the switch, and just how we set up the activities and the students for all the activities.
I promise we're getting to the really fun part soon with lots of photos and videos, but more the reason why we want to convince you to start doing this is just because of the parent involvement we've gotten. We are sending home real projects versus projects that the paras had a really fun time doing, and that allows parents to have carryover at home. I know the amount of IEPs that we've been in since we've started doing this, and having just more switch access. I know Melissa and I were in an IEP and a parent was like, oh my gosh, like our daughter was able to tell like her dad that she loved him for the first time using her switches. Just like things like that are just like so amazing and awesome and heartwarming and just like way more fun. Like the picture on the left is so much more fun than the other picture on the right. Like the para again had a really fun time making that, but that's not representative of who our kids are and how they're expressing themselves. Another thing, Melissa, you can go to the next slide, is these are some of the responses that we've gotten. Melissa, I think this is yours.
Yeah, this was some of the responses that we've gotten back. And a big part of it, I think, is because parents were getting things back that we could say, like, your kid shows all of the bits of this. Your kid shows how many eyeballs. Your kid shows which colors to use. Your kid wrote this book. Isn't that cool? And our parents of kids with significant disabilities and complicated bodies often have never gotten that before. And it's very, very cool to be able to say your child actually did this.
Mm-hmm.
Not, here is a cute gorilla that the para made for your child while your child watched and maybe had their body moved around. But yeah, this middle one especially was one a family who they had never gotten work home that their kid had actually composed, which was pretty darn cool.
Another email just showing parental involvement. So it says, hi, Jennifer, I hope you had a great vacation. Wani's pot gets lots of different tiny flowers. It's so touching. Thank you for sending it for us. We enjoyed it a lot. So we did a gardening unit that you'll see in a little bit. But now it's at home and it's something that the family can enjoy together, and it continues growing every single day. So that's pretty cool too. And then kind of what Ken's was saying too, us being in the classroom, modeling what language we're using, what tools we're using, has taken, this is an example from one of my classrooms, their art board used to be like the same exact, if we want to use the gorilla example, right? The same exact cute little gorilla craft. There was just like 8 or 9 of them. Now it's an incredible board that is art from the kids. It's real art from the kids. There's an elephant with like 8 eyeballs. There are school buses with no windows, 8 windows, 8 wheels. Like it just looks like an art board should look like. And it's been really cool because from the modeling, they have been able to do this by themselves without us in there. So we didn't have to be like, hey, please stop doing what you're doing. Just us being in there, we like walked in one day and we're like, oh my God, this is incredible. So it's been really cool to get that para and that teacher buy into just from kind of being in there and showing them what we've been doing. Okay, so this is the fun part now. So we have linked all of the units that we have done from the last school year. We've been working on more this year, which are not included in this presentation. But there is a link to each of the, yes, we did a poop unit.
Yeah.
There's a
Do
link.
you want me to click on one of them? So
yeah, click on one of them. And it would be our planning document. So there are already like 3 to 4 activities for you. There is a book for you to do, a shared reading book, and you please take it. Like take it, do whatever you want with it, adapt it however you need to for your kids. Our goal is just to get like your brain starts like thinking about like, how can I adapt this? How can I implement this in my, like, I want you to be able to go into tomorrow and like have something to do with your kids. So this is just kind of like our initial thinkings. The beginning documents are a little bit more chaotic than our new ones, because when we first started, it was literally just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what stuck. But there's a ton of activities in there. Please use them and adapt as needed. And we're going to kind of go through now just a few of the units and highlight them and show you what it looks like in action.
Yes, here are the units. All right, so as alluded to, we did do a poop unit. It's one of my favorites. We ended up having to end it a little early because there was an honest to goodness outbreak of Shigella in the classroom where we were doing it, which I swear was not witchcraft, it just happened. But for each of the units, we do a shared reading. So I'm the SLP, so I'm helping to facilitate the languagey, like literacy part, a lot of it. So our shared reading was the book, Whose Poop Is That? Linked in the planning doc is that this is just a Google slide deck that I made that has the book, Whose Poop Is That? And you'll see it's kind of a sciencey book. Like there'll be a picture, a drawing of some scat with a little description about it. And then it'll say, oh, this is the animal that it is. So that was our shared reading, which was super fun. Kids enjoy talking about poop, funnily enough. If you've met any children, you may know this already. Kids like talking about poop. So we had fun reading the book, and we would be like having their AAC out, maybe either commenting, or maybe they would point to something and I would comment about the book. We did a lot of fun things just reading the book. And then the even funner part, more fun part, this is also just a slide deck. Each kid got to make their own poop book. It's a Google slide deck that the template is linked in the planning doc, where they got to make their own poop book. This is Madison's. The first page was just a question. We are learning about poop at school. Do I poop? And we would ask them, do you poop? Have some voice output buttons. Whether they intentionally or accidentally hit one of them, we'd write that down. They were all doing it intentionally, because even the kids who said no would hit no and then go, like just totally messing with us. It was really fun. Madison said she did poop. And then the format of every page is who poops. So student would pick an animal, and then we would Google together, because fun fact, if you Google animal pooping, squirrel pooping, and Google images, you will find a picture of any animal. Madison picked a squirrel. This is how a squirrel poops. Then she picked a kangaroo, and this is how a kangaroo poops. Did you know? This is a raccoon, and this is how a raccoon poops. This is how an elephant poops. I know, right? Like, just hilarious. This is how this is a rabbit. This is how a rabbit poops. The end. So that was Madison's poop book. Her parents had never gotten writing that she had actually done. They at most they might have gotten like tracing her name that was done hand over hand. This is so much more fun. She got to read this over and over again and really enjoyed it. And we do, like, for picking the words, this is why robust AAC is important, because when we're saying you need to pick an animal, how does she pick an animal unless we can go to the animals page and pick one? Even if I'm saying, do you want a kangaroo? And she could tell me yes or no. Do you want a bunny rabbit? Yes or no? That's kind of how it's going with all of the students. And they all made just amazing poop books.
Let's get into some of the poop videos. Mackenzie there's a question in the chat for you. In this video, you'll see a student making poop on the left. We are using a food processor. The food processor is connected to a power link, and the student is using a switch to mix the dough to make poop. Go ahead, MP.
Of course, it's thinking.
Our time to make our mixer go. Yes! Nice job. Uh-oh. Yes! Hit it again. Nice job mixing.
So she was using her right hand to make the poop by mixing with the food processor. And then her left hand, there's a voice output there if she wanted to make comments about the poop. I'm not sure what Melissa had there, but maybe it's stinky or this is awesome, this is boring. Depending on the day, they add all sorts of things.
She also has 2 head switches, which are like her main access points, but she also likes to kind of fidget with things with her hands. So we kind of had both options available for her too.
I think we have a video of her coming up where she's using her head to make the poop, or that might be to pour the dirt. We'll have to see. And then after the students made the poop in the food processor and it was done, they were able to add any kind of ingredients they wanted to their poop. We have this alternate spinner here. They were able to put glitter, beans, lentils, corn, pom-poms, grass, whatever we found that day, we just put it on there, slapped it on the spinner, and the kids were able to use the switch to pick what was going to go in their poop. We did not hear any comments back from the parents that day, so we're not sure how they felt about getting poop sent home with their kids. This is another poop activity that went with our poop theme. For this activity, the students were able to pick any animal that they wanted. This individual in the video, he picked a snake. And on the left, you can see the little cups that we have. And Melissa, you can play the video and then I'll finish talking about it.
Go on and go. Go on and go. And oh my goodness, look at all that. Whoa.
So what you saw there was an animal pooping. This student was using both of his hands to activate the switch to pour vinegar from the switch adaptive pourer into the cup with a hole, and inside the cup was baking soda, chemical reaction, science activity, and the hole created the poop. And he chose to have red poop that day just because he wanted it. The parrot didn't pick it, I didn't pick it, he wanted his red poop.
Go on.
Sadly, that's all the poop talk that we have. Another unit that we did was a garden theme. I think we did this in the spring. Yeah, this one was also a really fun one. The book that we picked was My Delicious Garden. So it is a book that's going through the seasons of the year, thinking about in January, what are you doing to make your garden in February? How are you planning your garden in March? So it's going through the months of the year. So for the shared reading, we were doing months of the year, focusing a lot on the months, but also just talking about growing things, talking about plants, talking about the seasons. So that part was pretty fun. And then for the shared writing, they got to write a book where they picked something to do in each month. This one is by Kate. So for Kate's year, the format was in January, action. So in January, she picked the action jump. And then we went on Google Images and just typed in kid jumping. She got to pick which picture she wanted. This is the one she picked. In February, she picked ride a brown horse, which, fun fact, she does do hippotherapy and her horse is probably brown. This isn't a picture of her actual horse. This one was from Google, but it's really interesting when you start to give kids open-ended activities instead of activities that have a correct answer, how many fun things they will show you that they know. In March, she went to the aquarium. She picked drive, and then I think she must have also picked aquarium. So we've kind of made that into a sentence about going to the aquarium. So that was the shared writing for that unit, which is linked in the planning doc. I feel like the activities for this month were really the highlight, though. They were super fun.
This is the student you saw above, and this time she's actually using her head left and right to activate the switch to pour dirt into the pots.
Pour that dirt, Ashlyn. Go, go, go.
And as you all know, it's hard to take great videos when you're trying to treat and set everything up.
It's coming, Ashlyn. There it goes. Very, ooh, that was a good one.
And Melissa, you can go to the next video. We were making, and then this student is, you're gonna see in the video, he's using both of his hands to pour seeds into pot with the switch adapted pour. So similar to above, but this is seeds instead of dirt.
Seeds. There they go. Watch those seeds. Here they come, Wani.
His smile's
You
very
see those seeds
contagious.
pouring? Yeah. Yeah. You did that.
And then in the middle here, you can see the final project. The student took pictures and the grass, or the seeds grew into grass, and that was hair for them. They were able to make a card for their caregivers, and they were able to sign it using the alternative pencil. And then over here on the left, we have a video of students decorating their cards. They were able to use paint and markers with a switch activity that moves. Go ahead and play that, Melissa.
Should we make Buzz go? Yeah.
Sounded like Jennifer.
Look at him go.
Someone about break. Could you not go on your break? Oh.
Look at him go.
Half of my instructions got when they're dating.
Yes.
Yes, more color.
Oh my word, I love
Yeah, so if you have a switch activity that moves and a switch, you can do anything you want with it. The kids have been loving using race cars. In this instance, we're using Buzz Lightyear, some painter's tape, and any kind of art medium, and they can do anything given a canvas or a piece of paper. So that's been a lot of fun, and this was a favorite activity for the parents to receive.
Yeah. There was a question in the Q&A that I think fits in here. The question was, which goals are we working on? Just
Great
a good
question. So we have shared goals. So the Edmonds School District is new to the related service model. We might be a little late to the game compared to everybody else, and you can chime in on that if you'd like. So we're switching to new goals, and a lot of our goals are similar for all the students. So for this student, participation using a switch, using the alternative pencil to sign his name. Mac, do you know what specific goals? But those are two of our favorite goals that we have.
We like writing an adaptive goal for choice making for autonomy. So being able to make choices about the colors he's using with Buzz, which order that he's using for the colors. Thinking about his shared reading goals. So the My Delicious Garden is what he was working on with Melissa. Yeah,
I'm doing a lot of the literacy stuff. So I might have a shared reading goal where we're working on like commenting or talking about a book or participating in book reading for shared reading. And then shared writing or independent writing, like picking letters to sign his name is a great literacy goal that we use a lot. Instead of doing like tracing or hand over hand stuff, just be like, let's pick some letters. And that's going to be how you sign your name, which is much more true to like an actual writing, like developmental writing sequence for like how kids learn to write. So I'm doing a lot of the like literacy goals and having fun with them. Speaking of, we also did an ocean theme. For this one, our book was Just Grandma and Me, at an oldie but a goodie by Mercer Mayer. So this is a story. I just put it onto a Google slide deck again, because that was a format that everybody could access. And we could pull it up on student Chromebooks. In this book, there's always like an action. You're going to do something and then it goes bad. Then you do something else and then it goes bad. So kind of the social emotional part of it was like, sometimes we do things and they don't go the way we planned, but you can still have fun at the end. That's the way that the book goes. And so then each student got to write, and this one just kills me because this student is bigger now, but she was so tiny then. So each student got to write a book about my fun day. And again, there's no right answer here. Kids are just picking random words in their AAC sometimes, but we are showing them that when they pick words, we are going to take them seriously and put them into their book. And that's how they learn what writing is. They're like, oh, I randomly picked bowling alley. And look, we put a picture of a bowling alley in this book. Isn't this cool that I got to pick it? Azalea is further along than that, but even if students are quote unquote randomly picking words, like that's how kids learn what writing is. It's like, we're like, oh, you said bowling alley. Let's go find a picture of it. Let's put it in your book. Azalea wanted to go to the bowling alley with all of her friends. This is just all of the kids in her class who she wanted to go with, which was pretty fun. So like you're kind of getting the idea. The books often have a very similar format where students are picking a word or two into like a carrier phrase, and then we're finding a picture that goes with it. But the thing is, they love to reread the books, and their parents love to get books that have their child's ideas in them. I love this. We blew bubbles. It was bad. She was giggling so hard when she picked that, which lets me know she knows what bad is. She knows what writing is, because she's like, I'm going to write this down and it's going to say that every time. And it was just a really fun activity. So that was our shared reading and writing.
And then I'm going to go over this quickly because we have I'm looking at the time, there's 3 minutes, and I want to make sure we get to pickles, which is next. We use a switch adapted pour to make these acrylic pours that were beautiful. And then our lovely AT, head of the AT department, Heidi, she put on this oh my goodness, I just forgot of the word, alternative art show, like auction. And we were able to raise money in order to kind of continue this program and continue getting materials to do more accessible art in our district. So that was really cool because the community was involved in that too. And then that's some more of our ocean art. Oh, MP, you have a good story about this, though.
This is the good story. So I'm going to take the time to tell the story. We can just
tell
go
the
a little
story.
late. It's fine. So this was Ashlyn, who you saw in the video at the beginning using the alternative pencil. The video is from one of the first times she used an alternative pencil when she was just picking random letters. This was about a year later. She made the art. We're doing the same thing of signing the art. The words that she picked for her title were "want not," which, dummy me, I didn't realize she meant she wanted it to be untitled. She didn't want to pick any letters. I want no letters. I wrote it down as a title, so lesson learned now. And then she picked 2 letters, and I was kind of disappointed at first because I was like encouraging her to pick more, and she was adamant. She was like, "No, lady, I've picked 2. I'm done." But then I looked down and I realized those are actually her initials. So over the course of a year, she learned a lot about the alphabet that we didn't know she knew. And the way she was able to show it to us was because we were letting her pick anything. There were no right answers. And she was like, you know what? I'm a typical teenager. I'm going to use the least amount of letters possible to sign my name. And it was actually signing her name, which was just an amazing moment. The pickles. We did promise pickles, so we will definitely follow through on the pickles. Pickle Things is the book that we did, which is just a silly book about pickles. It's kind of a book about absurdities, pickle things you never see, like pickles on a Christmas tree, a pickle ear, a pickle nose. There's just a lot of silliness in this book. Pickle toes, which the kids all love that. We did some shared writing, and this shared writing was a little different. We had them design a pickle person. Oh, I'm going to skip this one because I want to get to the pickle people. Our shared writing was making up a pickle person. So instead of making a book, we're kind of like filling out a worksheet where they're picking what their pickle person is going to look like. Jaden picked a potato. So they got to pick a veggie, pick the size of it, pick the color. Are there any patterns? How many legs and arms? So here there's a lot of like numbers and letters and like using their AAC to pick things. They got to name it if they want to tell us anything else about it, which was just a really fun thing. And then our magical OTs made these pickle people reality.
Yes. And look how much more fun these pickle people are and how proud of sweet Azalea. She's so proud of her work because it is something that's representative of her. And then we decided to take it further and this is also part of the pickle process or pickle person process. So we were using, similar to the alternative pencil, and alternative number line. So my friend Wani is telling me I asked him like how many eyes did you want? And he had told me, turn the page, and then he got to 10 and hit 10. And so we gave his pickle person 10 eyes because that is something that he wanted.
Yeah. And I will point out, Wani does some things with his hands, but some things not. And a lot of our students can't really use their hands. So the way
Mhm.
they are doing it is that they're telling us what they want, like 10 eyes, and then we are putting on 10 eyes.
Yes.
So that is a way to work around it. If the student's not able to physically do it themselves, they can still control the process. And we have a lot of like adaptive goals for directing adults, which is the kind of thing that we're working on when we're making a lot of these art projects, is tell the adult what you want them to do, which is a massively important life skill for all of these students. What?
Oh no.
No, where did our videos go?
I don't know. Well then, oh no, are they all gone?
I am very confused.
I think because
No.
it's 5:01, I'm guessing because the time's up that we can't access our videos.
Oh, possibly. Well,
The
we still have
pictures
some
are there.
pictures of them though.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna describe the videos for you. They are our friends. We used our some of our friends were able to like chop the vegetables. They picked the vegetable they wanted, they would chop it, or an adult would chop it, and then they used the switch adapted pour to pour in vinegar, spices, water, and then shake it all up. And so on the left, you can see Wani having a really fun time making his pickles. Wani also is like sometimes really hard to keep him regulated throughout the day, and usually bringing him over to like a switch adapted activity is like where we see the most regulation and like peace and calmness. And I think that's partly because it's like something that he can do by himself, which is awesome. And then on the right, those are just our final examples of the pickles that we made, because we wanted to show that even pickling is possible with alternative access. So really, if you just think of anything you want to do, you can make it switch accessible. And hopefully using kind of our guide and seeing how we've done a few things will give you some inspiration and start thinking about how you can take that to your school or setting or wherever you're at.
And that is actually perfect timing. We're only 3 minutes over. We have a few minutes to stay and answer questions, I think. Yes? We do anyway. We'll stay here till people figure
If
this
Jim
out.
allows us, yes.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
as much time as you're happy to stay for.
Cool.
Stop sharing just so that you can see our faces, and let's check the Q&A and see if there's anything we haven't kind of talked about already. Oh, I see. Where do you get all these amazing ideas from? Creativity is not my strong suit. I will say I get my amazing ideas from these two. I don't know where they are on your screen. It is a lot more fun and a lot easier to be a little silly when you have more brains in the room.
Yeah, I feel like we just bounce off each other a lot. Like usually we'll pick a theme and then I'll start on like Pinterest, and then Ken's and I will just start like bouncing off each other. We have a very chaotic personalities together.
Which is really excellent.
Yes.
I mean, we just think of things that we like to do. Like when it was the
Mhm.
pickling, this was before we started relating to Retopia. And it's
Mhm.
like, I like pickles. And you're like, I like pickles. It's like, well, let's do a pickle project. And some people are like, you can't make pickles with these kids. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Prove it. Like, we're going to do it. And we did it. And everybody loved it. And the pickles were amazing.
The pickles were really good. I also think it is nice when you have more than one person, because when especially since there's 3 of us, like the 3 of us coming to a classroom teacher being like, hey, we have this cool idea, is a lot more believable than just me by myself coming and saying, I would like to talk about poop in your classroom for the next month. It is more credible when you have more people involved and more excitement around it. Yeah, that's kind of what I'd say. I see more questions. Let's see what's there. Oh, there's some logistics questions there.
Too, like once you I would say our first few units, it took a little bit more like thinking about planning and how to adapt things. But then since we've been doing it so much, it's kind of like, now it's like, oh yeah, duh, we can adapt it this way. Or like, oh, easily we can do this type of project. You can kind of, once you have like the kind of foundation of it, you can easily kind of adapt that and apply it to other activities.
Yeah, which is part of why like we provided like all of the, not all of them, but many of the planning documents that we put together are linked there. So you can see what we did.
Mhm.
Please take it, adapt it. If those ideas are a little much, you can tone them down a little bit, or you can tone them up. I saw somebody saying they hope that a PT was involved, and yes, so do we. We have a lovely PT. We have several lovely PTs.
They'll be with us next year.
Mhm.
Yes, we're building up. We're not gonna drive everybody crazy all at once. I think we've answered the majority of the questions.
I think so too.
Yeah.
There is one more that just popped up in the chat.
Oh, my students receive their OT via teletherapy. Do you feel these lessons should be implemented via tele?
100%, as long as the parents or whoever's at home with the student has the equipment, right? I mean, you just need a switch and a pour, and you can make these things. I think on the landing page, we have some cheap ways to make it instead of buying some expensive versions. I can check.
Yeah, check that one. I would say it's definitely possible to adapt them if the parents had at least some of the equipment. Like
Mhm.
a power link would be really useful because you can just plug anything into it, so they could make their blender, their mixer, food processor, whatever would be easy. Like you could easily adapt a lot of things. The pouring tool would be nice, but it's also possible going with the concept of like the student tells you what to do and you do that.
I love that idea.
Like using partner assisted scanning, if you just have a reliable yes and no, some like at least one switch site, and parents who are willing to, like, if their student tells them to make purple poop, they're going to do it. Like, yeah, you could totally work on that. And that kind of self-advocacy part of students telling grown-ups what to do is always a useful thing to work on. One of my favorites. I want my kids to boss me around. Yeah.
Someone asked, do you ever work with vision? Yes and no.
I mean, yeah, we have students who have CVI
Yeah.
or other vision needs. We talk with the vision therapist, the teacher of the blind who's in our district to like figure out what the student's able to see. And that's kind of how we do it, like making sure that what we're bringing is something that they can see, or if they can't see it, making it so that they can hear it or feel it instead of seeing it. Just sometimes your eyes are not your strongest sense.
Any issues with billing through Access?
I don't think we do that, so I don't know.
We bill Medicaid in the state of Washington, and we
Yeah.
usually work with the students at different times, so we haven't had any issues with billing.
Yeah, but you can bill for co-trading in Medicaid, at least in Washington State. So I don't foresee any problems with that. But yeah, we have, mostly just because of the timing of when we're all in the building, we're usually working separately.
Another question, I have a blind student who is also sensory defensive. She doesn't have a device, but finding activities for her is a challenge since if she doesn't want to touch something, she drops it. Any suggestions? My initial thoughts are thinking about the other senses. So can we offer some more choices using auditory or partner assisted scanning? What do you think, Kenz?
If you want to think about switches, I would not use her hands if she doesn't want to touch it or drop it, but is there something else that she doesn't mind touching, like her elbow, her toe, her tongue, her ear, her nose? I mean, we've seen switches students use like the craziest body parts. I'm like, how did you do that? So I would just not use her hands and see how that works.
Or if there is like a texture that she does like
or gravitate towards, you can put it on top.
like thinking about like maybe like a pillow switch or something that's not like a hard jelly bean switch.
I like that idea
too.
Yeah, and I would say if there's something that she doesn't like to touch, don't ask her to touch it. Like say, I'm going to touch the thing. What should I do with it? And ask her to direct you and establish safety in that way. So she knows like this person isn't going to make me touch something that makes my skin feel like, you know, whatever it feels like. I don't know what it feels like to her, but if she's showing you that something is aversive to her, don't try to convince her to touch it. Try to show her that it's safe, that she's not going to have to touch it. We're going to do that part for her, but she can still participate.
And then I think the last one, and I'll have to go over to the chat too, is how much are teachers involved in these lessons? In Virginia, OT is always a related service and primarily supports the curriculum the teacher is responsible for creating and adapting. So go for it.
I was gonna say, I would say we've been working towards having like integrating more into the curriculum as we've gone along. Like Mackenzie Light talked about, our teachers are now using Readtopia this year, which again, we're not being paid to promote it, but I do really like it.
Same.
And
Thanks,
that's
Dawn
been helpful
Johnson.
just to help us kind of organize around it. Teachers are more interested in participating when they see that you brought something that's like you've thought about it and it's really fun. Like when they see their students having fun, you're in. That's kind of what I would say.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
I think that's it. Thank you everyone for coming. It's been really fun.
This is lovely.
Thanks for
everybody.
staying even a little late with us.
Yeah.
All right, Melissa, Mackenzie, and Mackenzie, thank you so much for the great presentation and for all the resources. I'm sure those are greatly appreciated. For those of you who are still with us, please make sure you are completing the assessment. The assessment's only necessary if you want those ASHA CEUs. If you don't need ASHA CEUs, but you do need a general certificate of attendance, that will come out tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central Time. So 24 hours after the start of today's presentation. Thank you everyone for attending and have a great night.